Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget, as nobody can get rich in podcasting anymore except for people who are there at a very specific time, and even then it's like it took them a while to build their empire, and when they did, it kind of like took over the popular culture for a minute of the entire industry and they became a name upon themselves. We're talking about one of the last guys in comic books to make any real money or impact today, folks. We're talking Robert Kirkman, a very interesting creator in the comic book field. I think he's well revered to an extent. I don't really think anyone's against him, but it's its own can of worms, isn't it? When it comes to dealing with Kirkman, it's its own thing. And that's a whole lot. I'm doing this instead of talking about Invincible Season 2. We'll get more into that in a minute here. We have a little bit of news to talk about. This is coming out a day later than usual because I didn't really want to do like a news episode coming out on like April Fool's or during Easter. So I'm like, let's just wait a day and we'll talk about all this stuff the following day. It seemed easier. So our first piece of news to get into, not that much. It's kind of just like in vein of a lot of other stuff going on. Jeremy Allen White is just the latest name to be attached to doing a musical biopic, something that's been going on forever, very common, everyone loves them. They're so prominent and cool. This one is Bruce Springsteen, and it's potentially called Deliver Me From Nowhere. And you're just like, okay, man, I get it. I like Allen White. I want to see him succeed. I want to see him do some fun stuff. I don't think any of these biopics have really justified their existence. The next one we have that's like a big deal is the Amy Winehouse one. And everyone's already like, this looks really bad and stupid. We're currently filming the Bob Dylan one of Chalamet, and I'm like, I don't know what Chalamet's going to add that we haven't already touched upon. And we're filming the Michael Jackson one, which you're also like, why are we filming a Michael Jackson biopic for a 2025 release? That is very weird. But I don't know. Bruce Springsteen's cool. And I like Jeremy Allen White, so maybe this will be interesting. I just think we've been burned so many times. The Bob Marley one, well, I say this, the Bob Marley one wasn't good. It did make like $170 million worldwide. So that's probably why we're getting all of these. But I think Bob Marley's like a cut above a lot of these people for influential and important and like a political figure people are aware of. So I don't know. It's very strange. I don't really get it. Not much else to say on that one. Just more of that stuff happening. Some more casting news that is interesting to talk about. Katy O'Brien has been cast in the next Mission Impossible film, Mission Impossible 8, which I believe is currently filming or in the process of beginning to film. That's exciting. I know they were supposed to film these back-to-back, like 7 and 8, but COVID kind of shut that down. So now they're coming in with like this new feeling. Katy O'Brien coming off of Love Lies Bleeding, which is a great star-turning performance for her. I can't wait to see what's going to come next. I love the way Cruise is collecting these beautiful ladies, just being like, yeah, come on. Come in the franchise over here with me. It'll be really fun. If I can surround myself with like cool ladies, I'm going to look awesome. And he does. Tom Cruise looks awesome when he does that kind of stuff. So props to him for just like literally getting shit done and being a cool guy about things. I love it. You love to see it. You love to see it. Now we only have a couple other pieces of news to talk about. It's going to be a short news week. It's heavily rumored that Ready or Not, the film starring Samara Weaving, which should have been like her star-breaking performance, it is implied that that's going to get a sequel. That was from Jeff Snyder. And Jeff Snyder himself has been having a little bit of like some interesting stuff. He kind of reported about Sydney Sweeney reportedly in talks to join Johnny Depp in a new film, his like resurrection. And everyone was really like, this isn't true. Why did you say this? You're lying. And I tend to believe Sydney Sweeney over him. So she's like, I'm not doing that. So it kind of like puts into question like the legitimacy of like some of his other scoops. But a Ready or Not movie sequel, sure. That movie was pretty fun. I had a good time with that. I remember watching it with my dad and we're just like, this is surprising in ways I wasn't expecting. It's kind of a cool idea. What is the sequel though? Because that whole family's like dead. Does she marry again? Does she like stop this from happening to other people? It's like, what do you do? Because the premise of that movie is she marries into this family, and the idea is they have to sacrifice her before like a specific time. They have to kill her and sacrifice her, or they die because they're like devil worshippers or something. What are the odds that happens to her again? That seems unlikely, but I'm always here for a Samara Weaving resurgence. That's a really cool idea. I like Samara Weaving. Now, our final piece of news comes in the form of another sequel that's being talked about. It's kind of finally like fully confirmed. It's been confirmed for a while, but I'm like, I guess we could pad this out a bit. A Simple Favor, the 2018 semi-hit. It is kind of a popular movie. It did okay at the box office. It was from Anna Kendrick and Blake Lively, and you know that fun pairing, a Paul Feig joint, and it's getting a sequel. They're finally going to be doing a sequel. It grossed 97.6 worldwide. Holy shit. That's pretty good for this stupid movie. Like, I was not expecting that, but cool. So it's getting a sequel. Paul Feig's returning to direct, and, cast is coming back. Blake Lively was supposed to be doing an adaptation of Lady Killer on Netflix. I feel like that's not going to happen anymore. Thank fucking God. I think she'd be a terrible choice for that. Absolutely dreadful, but whatever. What do I know? Crazy. I'm looking at the domestic weekend for A Simple Favor as we speak. It did pretty good. It came out the same day as that new Predator movie. That sucks. Okay. I don't know why this is interesting. Is this interesting to anybody but me? Whatever. I didn't hate that first movie. It was not one I saw in cinemas. I remember watching A Simple Favor one night on the television. I'm like, this is really good movie to watch on like a long airplane ride. I like both of these ladies for different reasons, but I don't think there's genuine interest in trying to do this again. I think both of their stardoms have like fallen off to the point where you're like, oh, this doesn't feel like a natural progression. 6 years later, what are these ladies up to? Whatever. We'll definitely talk about the first movie before this one comes out if it ever happens, but there you go. A Simple Favor is getting a sequel. Blake Lively's return to movies. Is she going to be in Deadpool 3 as a Deadpool? Probably. Wouldn't be surprised. Okay. Well, on that sour, bitter note, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's jump into the world of Robert Kirkman, the modern king of comics. So, Robert Kirkman. Yeah, let's talk about him. He is the first comic book creator I'm actually talking about in great detail. We've talked about comic book characters. We've talked about directors and actors, but we never talked about like a comic book creator. And maybe there are other guys who should have been first on this list to get to when we're talking about like comic book creators themselves. I'm sure there could be. But the thing is, Kirkman is like the last like true guy to like make an empire out of comic books. He has his own imprint. He burned bridges with like some of the other big companies. He's made a few enemies along the way, but he's kind of just like a jovial guy who's like, I like horror stuff. I'll write like a weird horror comic every now and then. I know what I'm doing. If you want me to do like a Transformers or G.I. Joe, yeah, like put him in my universe. I don't really care. I'm pretty good just like doing stuff like this. And you know what? He is. Say what you will about Robert Kirkman. I know I have before. He is pretty good at doing this very specific thing, and that is just making stuff and having it succeed. He's one of the last few guys to really like get rich, get big, build an empire upon himself in the comic book world. The last guy I think to truly do it was Todd McFarlane, where you're like, he left the big companies, he burned his bridges there, he's like, I'm not coming back, I'm going to go make my own thing at Image, I'm going to make Spawn, it's going to be super big, I'm going to make toys based off Spawn, we're going to get a cartoon based off of Spawn. And today, McFarlane is making like the DC multiverse line of action figures. He's making action figures based on like sports and athletes from across the globe. The dude's winning. Like, he won. And to some extent, Kirkman is in the same boat, although it is in like a different energy than what McFarlane had to get successful, just because of like the nature of how we like do things today. It just changes, it becomes very different, it becomes its own thing. And that's just how it goes. You know, like today's audience, you can't just like get toy deals anymore. You have to build an empire in the 90s. And when you build your empire in like the 2010s, it definitely becomes its own thing. It changes drastically and it looks very different because the landscape that we've seen Kirkman build is very different. He has his successes. He's good. He's fine. If he were to retire right now at the age of 40 something, he'd be set because he made a TV show that is still going on that has like 18 spin-offs, and he's got a successful cartoon in development, and he's literally doing like Universal Monsters books right now. Like for some reason, Kirkman has a deal with Universal Studios to make Universal Monsters comic books through his imprint Skybound, and he also like wrote the story that the Renfield movie is based off of. He did work on like another movie in like 2015, but he wrote Renfield. Like he pitched the story for Renfield. And it's like a weird horror comedy, which is like his wheelhouse. He likes pulpy energy stuff, and that becomes like what he's known for. So we're going to talk about like his big successes because, you know, he's worked on a couple of things here and there. He did like a Super Patriot miniseries, blah, blah, blah. You know, Battle Pope kind of like became his biggest success, which is kind of, I guess, like the first place to really like start talking about Kirkman. Battle Pope, it's one of those ones that's kind of like lost to time now, where you're like, this used to be something people really enjoyed and would talk about, and the character would appear in other books and stuff. I think recently Battle Pope appeared in like some of like the weird backup stuff that Tim Seeley was doing for Local Man. But you're just like, this is a small book, it's making fun of religion, it's kind of satirical, it kind of like plays into like the superhero comedy, parody, homaging stuff that Kirkman loves to talk about, and that's what Battle Pope was. I don't hate it. It's definitely not my favorite of his works. I don't know what my favorite of Kirkman's work would be. Actually, I think I know which one it is just because I'm just very impressed that the book exists, but it's just it's just like, this is a guy who's kind of like not from like the Hollywood era where we had like Bendis and Oeming show up and we had like Kevin Smith come to comic books to do stuff. He's of that era and generation, but he's a little bit younger than those guys. And he's just kind of like a little grimier, like sillier boy. It's like if your friend who like always made jokes suddenly like got to like tell his jokes on like a global stage and became like a breakout comedian overnight. And now he's like running comedy, but like comic books now. It's really crazy. So like the modern era of stuff that Kirkman is doing, you know, he's working on a book called Void Rivals, which is like set in the world of Transformers and G.I. Joe. Skybound has currently like made deals with Universal. They're probably going to start developing. I could 100% guarantee a lot of like the stuff that he hasn't had turned to successes yet. He wants to turn into a television show like Firepower. I could definitely see being up there, which is fine. I think the modern era of like the current like books from like the 2020s era of Kirkman, like Firepower and Void Rivals, they're successful, but they're never going to reach the heights of someone like his earlier work or his like Marvel works. Now, I will say this, it should go without saying that like a very successful guy like this, along the way of like his success, he's going to burn a couple of bridges. Some people that he worked on for a long time in his career might end up suing him or like filing a lawsuit against him. That's all very plausible, and I don't need to get into all of that stuff, but when you have Kirkman in the same successful boat as guys like Todd McFarlane, Stan Lee, where they are a name unto themselves, where you want to read their books and you want to see them succeed in an empire, you're going to make a few enemies along the way. Now, it's pretty clear McFarlane and Kirkman are friends, so whatever you feel about those people, that's for you to figure out on your own. I'm not against Kirkman. I'm not a fan of a lot of his works. I don't think he's a genius writer. I don't think he's a very interesting creator, and some of the stuff that he has created I don't really love. I guess Thief of Thieves would be one of my like more favorite of his independent stuff, but I don't even think that book is like great. I just think it's like, yeah, sure, try something, man. If you really think that's like a big old book from him, it's not one I think gets talked about a lot, but it's fine. It's fine. But Battle Pope is definitely like his breakout success, an early 2000s darling, where like that era of kind of like subversive internet humor stuff was really starting to take off. And that's another thing where I just think like that era of like the 2000s, you could just try different stuff and you will have people become interested in what you are talking about and the successes that come with that. Because Invincible, the reason we're talking about Kirkman today, because I did not want to talk about season 2. Here is my review of season 2. By the time this comes out, we didn't have the entire season done. The last episode still has to come out of the season. I don't like this show. I don't like what Invincible represents. I don't like these characters. I don't like this world. I don't like the nature of this being. I'm not anti-Invincible because I do think there's like a certain type of like fan of comic books that wants to see that. It does sometimes cross over with The Boys where you're getting like the wrong message from what you're watching here. But I don't think Kirkman is presenting this as like a satire the way Garth Ennis is. Kirkman's more like, yeah, it wouldn't be fucked up if you could like break someone's head off by punching it. That'd be pretty silly. And wouldn't it be funny if your like girlfriend had like a dump truck ass and she was super hot and cool and you're just like a nerdy little guy who likes comic books and you like to jerk off and like everybody thinks you're the coolest guy in the world? That's the energy I get from Kirkman. Not all the time, but I think especially in like Invincible, he's just this guy who wants to put a specific version of himself in the books, a specific version of how he creates into the books, and he wants to talk about that in a specific way. I don't like Invincible for some of those reasons. I think just like the mindless gore and blood and bruises that come from that type of comic book where it's like, look how fucked up it is. We're going to like kill innocent people all the time just in like the calamities of war. Everyone's going to be like mutilated and destroyed. I don't like that stuff from Invincible. It's really lame to me. I've talked about this book a couple of times. But my favorite comic book about superheroes, my favorite superhero comic book is Astro City. And that is always something I say is like the antithesis to things like Invincible and The Boys. Where in both of those properties, it's like, look how fucked up a god is. Look how weird it is that like Superman could come down or Spider-Man could come down and they're going to like kill you and like go to your school. Isn't that weird? But in Astro City, the Samaritan character who's like Homelander or Omni-Man, he's just like, man, isn't this crazy how like this new generation's different and like they're doing their own thing and that's really cool and we're all still like superheroes and having fun and the golden age is over, but I'm still like me. And I like to see that where it's more like reminiscing about the golden age as opposed to just shitting on it. And I'm not saying Invincible shitting on it, but it's not glorifying it in any way. And it just becomes too in its own head. It comes too contrived and simplistic and it loses itself. And we don't have to spend too much time on this very specific thing I want to bring up in this moment. I don't think Robert Kirkman is like the best guy when it comes to writing female characters. I don't know who I'd say is his best written female character. A lot of his leads are men. A lot of his leads are like these interesting broken kind of men who a lot of women start to like in different ways. I think Invincible's a lot like that, and I do think The Walking Dead to some extent is like that. He clearly wants to talk about like a broken guy who is saved by women sometimes, and that's okay. I think you can feel a lot of like his personality shining through on things like that. The dude's happily married, and I have nothing against that. Good for him. Like, he deserves everything. It's really cool that he's in that position. His son is pretty old now, too, I think. I don't know. Some of those guys, especially like some of those early Image guys, like that era of Image, it's not really known for writing strong women. And when he's like a disciple of the temple of Todd McFarlane, you can tell it's not like the thing he wants to talk about. And that's okay. And I think Invincible it's there. We're like, this is not about the women characters. It's about Mark, not really like, Mark always has like a girl who's pining for him in some capacity and stuff like that. And that could get really boring. The stuff I do like in Invincible is more like the dynamics and the relationships being more realistic. I understand like the realism sense where you could be like, if Superman existed, he'd just like kill everybody because he could just punch them easily and they die. And some people might find that realistic and, charming. I find it to be aggressive and annoying. But the realistic stuff I like is when, say, you go away into a special dimension for a while, you come back and your girlfriend's like, yeah, you were gone for months. I had to get on with my life, so sorry if I don't feel the same way about you as I did back then. That's the realism stuff that I like more in Invincible, and I feel like that's the kind of stuff that nobody else really pays attention to on some scale. I say all this, it's not a book for me. I've never really enjoyed the concept or the world. Same with The Boys. I do like Invincible more than The Boys, but just that type of destructive violence where it thinks it's homaging and parodying superheroes, but it's just more like, yeah, isn't this weird? Fine, cool. The Walking Dead is something I do like a little bit more. I think The Walking Dead is handled with more brevity. It's more like, in its initial run, The Walking Dead is more like a pulpy comic book where you see Kirkman really just wants to have fun. He's like, I love horror stuff. I rarely get to see cool horror books in like this era. We're not like in that era where we're doing like fun, energetic horror stuff like Hack and Slash is still on the way. And we're not like in that perfect era where everything's lining up for this. But The Walking Dead is just like that lightning in a bottle comic book that came out at the perfect time, that when Skybound was going to burst into the scene, you could easily see the transition from this comic book being successful in that era to it developing into something on television. When essentially, and I say this loosely, but essentially like The Walking Dead success in comic books kind of like reinvigorated like this type of horror zombie book in comics, and the success of the TV show did that for television and movies. And that's just a guy who knew the tone to make that. It's not as like tongue-in-cheek as something like Invincible or silly like Battle Pope. It is destructive and violent, but it's in like black and white, and it's more like this artful portrayal while still being like a classic pulp horror magazine, which is something that Kirkman also really likes. So that works well. The Walking Dead is a very interesting book that you could say it ran for longer than it did, but maybe that's just like the point of The Walking Dead, to exist longer than it needs to, because even that TV show has existed longer than it needs to. And we could say all we want about that, but it is still kind of impressive that we got 11 seasons of a Walking Dead TV show, and then we got like 8 spin-offs because of it, and we're still living in the Walking Dead world. Like the Rick and Michonne TV series, like the first season of that just ended this week. We're still seeing this be strong. And I wonder if Kirkman is happy with The Walking Dead being his legacy. I feel he's really excited that like Invincible's finally like becoming the big thing on like television. But if like all you had was The Walking Dead, is that enough to keep you satisfied, or would you like to be remembered for other stuff as well? I feel like you would like to be remembered for other stuff as well, but The Walking Dead, I mean, it's fun. It's campy. It's taken seriously, but it's still like schlucky in some aspects. It strikes the perfect balance of like the two halves of Kirkman. The I'm doing a silly thing with the I'm deadly serious and look how fucked up and gross everything is. The Walking Dead is like the perfect blend of that world for him, and that's probably why he gets to do Marvel Zombies. And Marvel Zombies is just the extremes of like everything is dreary and sour and it's bad. This is not a book I have read since I was a young guy. I think I read it when I was like 12 or 13. I thought it was okay back then, and I just like really liked the pictures, but I was like, this is really sad. I haven't gone back and read it, but the stuff I do remember where it's like Peter Parker freaking out that he like ate his aunt, and like Dr. Pym like having T'Challa like strapped to a table and slowly like eating his legs and stuff. It sounds stupid, and I don't know if it would hold up in retrospect for me. Maybe it would, but I seriously doubt it. I don't think if I went back and read Marvel Zombies now, it would have like the same impact that the Walking Dead original books did. I feel like it'd just feel sour and bitter, and just a guy who's like, fuck Marvel, what is all this shit? It's stupid. Why are they making me write this crap? This is dumb. I'm going to show you how dumb this all is. And it was dumb. It was pretty fucking dumb. And you know, we didn't get a lot of Kirkman at Marvel. He did a couple of things in like Ultimate X-Men and Fantastic Four and stuff, and just kind of showed up for a couple of books here and there. But, you know, That's not what he wanted to be known for. So you could definitely see how, like, he does this, he does another successful book at Marvel, and he's like, fuck off, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm going to go, like, make Skybound and be successful in my own right. I'm already successful because of Invincible and The Walking Dead. I don't need you guys. But before I go, let me make one fucked up superhero in the name of Eric O'Grady. Thinking about this a little bit, I do think my favorite work from Robert Kirkman is the Irredeemable Ant-Man. It's definitely the best thing he wrote for Marvel. I don't even think it's, like, great. I just think it's really interesting at, like, that specific moment in Marvel. They're like, we can get this guy who's pretty big. Comic book fans like him. He's very popular. He can give us a weird Ant-Man book. And that's pretty exciting. I am a fan of Eric O'Grady. I do like when that character exists within a comic continuity. He's more of a prick than a Guy Gardner. And I respect that Guy Gardner showing up and being a prick. But I really like Eric. It's just like, I'm kind of a schmaltz. You know, I'm a loser. Who gives a fuck about me? I'm not really anything. And then doing 12 issues of that about just like this freak who just has an Ant-Man suit and is just running about being a menace to society about stuff. Like, that is pretty impressive and works really well for that character. What I really like about the Irredeemable Ant-Man is how it feels like a book that Marvel would absolutely kill themselves before they made again. They would never attempt this type of elite character doing the things he does in this. And it's just like that Kirkman sensibility of the parody thing again, where it's like, oh, you want me to write Ant-Man? Okay, well, he's a little pervert. He's going to watch people shower, just be a freak in a tub. You know, he's not really going to take anything seriously. He's just going to be a dick. I'm going to mix all of the ego of Hank Pym and Scott Lang into its own Ant-Man, and he's going to be the worst guy you've ever met. And I kind of respect that. I like that Marvel is taking a chance in this era to make a really shitty guy. I just like how weird this character feels and how weird he acts. It's pretty interesting. They would never attempt it again, and I'm just glad, like, for like a moment, for like a year, we just had this little freak running about being a freak. And the Irredeemable Ant-Man, it's a soft spot for me. I love the suit. I love the idea, because it's just stupid. It's just like, we could never attempt this today. What if we made like a new generation, like Iron Man, who is just like, I'm going to use my stealth suit to sneak into Avengers Tower and watch Carol Danvers shower. All the while, everybody hates me. All the while, I'm a loser. Marvel would never make this book today. And I love that for them so freaking much. Because it's such a cool energy. But he does not stay at Marvel. As we know that later on, he will go on to invent a new imprint at Image that is called Skybound Entertainment. And Skybound Entertainment is not just this thing that Kirkman created. It's a house that's going to like breathe ideas and make new things. Super Dinosaur comes from them. They had a children's cartoon. They work in video games. They work in movies and stuff. They build everything. They work on everything. Kirkman wrote a script for the Renfield movie. Like, they just have so much stuff just come out of there now. It's like a breathing yard. It's like a breeding farm, I should say. I don't know what a breathing yard is, but whatever. It's just like a house that breeds ideas. And then it's like, we'll put them anywhere. Who really cares? We'll just make anything. I'll come out somewhere. They have done a lot of stuff with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. They've done a couple things with them. They have partnerships with Universal Studios. They have partnerships with Amazon. They have just been doing stuff. Like, they made that Walking Dead video game. That was part of them. And you're like, okay, cool. Good for you. They currently are doing Cobra Commander and Duke and Transformers and Void Rivals and stuff. And all of that just comes from the success of things like The Walking Dead and Invincible, where all reprints and all later tellings or whatever you want to do, it comes from Skybound now. And that's crazy. And you can look at a list of like a lot of books that come out of Skybound. You know, Daniel Warren Johnson was a big person there. You see Birthright comes from them, so Joshua Williamson has some staying power in there. Are they doing the Larry Hama G.I. Joe? I think they are doing the new Larry Hama G.I. Joe stuff, so that's from there as well. A lot of big stuff comes from that. And they worked on movies. They worked on television shows, The Walking Dead in particular, but Super Dinosaur comes out from them. And they did PSI Cops. Okay, that's kind of fun. But it's like, yeah, look at them. They're building an empire now. Kirkman has made an empire. He's doing the kind of thing that McFarlane did. McFarlane went in the direction that the 90s could approach, which was, I'm going to make toys. I'm going to make a cartoon. But now we're a media empire. We make comic books, and we can make those comic books into anything. And that's what Kirkman did. That is where Kirkman made his empire. And then from there, he makes a couple other comic books that are independent for himself. We talked about FIFA Thieves for a minute. That was whatever. Another big one for him is Outcast, which is just like a horror book. It's definitely more of just like a straight up horror, that's his bread and butter. He loves that. I love when a horror guy just like does a horror thing. And he gets to shine in that capacity, just tell like a horror story. That gets adapted over at Cinemax. Is that the one that did it? So that ran for a bit. Oblivion Song, which is one that hasn't been adapted yet, but it kind of like just ended less than 2 years ago. It's just like, what if there was like a gateway that sends you to a new place and stuff like that? And you're like, yeah, what if? I don't know, man. That's crazy. And that book's pretty fun. I gotta commend that book for existing. It's interesting what he's done. But it's an empire. It's an empire. It's crazy. Like he makes some independent books. 2 of them blow up to extremes. Marvel's like, come over here, do something for us. He's like, I don't like working for you. I can't work for you. I'm going to do my own thing. Builds media empire. His successful stuff gets turned into television and movies and video games. Makes a couple more comic books for fun. And then it's like, hey, do you want to work with like Universal and like Paramount and stuff? He's like, yeah, sure. And he does. And he freaking does. And he did. And he still is. It's crazy. It's really cool. Like, you got to respect that. Like, just a guy who just had it all together. And he's doing Firepower, which will definitely be adapted at some point. And he's doing Void Rivals, which he's writing. So you got that going on. You have all of, like, the Skybound stuff. Super Dinosaur we talked about. A lot of just books. And that's kind of fun. I'm looking at his bibliography here. Nothing really crazy outside of some other stuff. But you just see, like, he creates characters. Marvel doesn't give him the proper money for that. So he's like, fuck it, I'm not being here anymore. I'm going to do my own thing. But it's crazy. Maybe it's that energy of, like, knowing he could do something special with Marvel, but they would never let him, like, truly survive that, is why the Irredeemable Ant-Man works so well. Because he's like, I have the chance to do something cool. They'll never let me do it, though. So I'm just going to make this weird thing. Maybe that's why it works. Maybe that's why I like it so much. Maybe. It's just kind of fun. I am not the biggest fan of everything that Kirkman has worked on. I think some of it's boring. I think some of it's lame. Some of it just, like, tries too hard. And the stuff it's trying to do is so stupid and not for me. But I admire a guy who's just like, yeah, this industry, you have to find the one spot you can exploit, and then you can grow your empire. When you make The Walking Dead for AMC, you put AMC on the map on a bigger scale where they're going to make bigger production stuff. And look, Mad Men and Breaking Bad were very successful, but now it's like, oh, we can make like higher end genre stuff. We can make successful interpretations of cartoons and video games and just be successful where other companies are going to work with us. We'll reach out to other companies and they'll be like, yeah, you can do a Dracula book for us and a Creature from the Black Lagoon book. We'll let you because you've proven you can do that. And that's all it is. It's just like the little successes that you can see make up this guy. So love him or hate him, and I know he's got his fans, and I know that some of his characters who are kind of like dickheads and stuff could be emulative of him or people in his life he wants to talk about. There is something there that is very successful. And we may never see the likes of it again. There are successful people in comic books right now. I'm not going to say every one of them. There have been people who have worked in the industry for a long time who've never graduated to this level of success. But we may never see the likes of a Kirkman again. It's like a one-in-a-generation type. It was a Stan Lee in the early days. It's a Todd McFarlane in the 90s. And then in the 2010s, it's a Robert Kirkman. And maybe in 2040, we'll see like who the next guy could be. But things have changed so much that this could never really happen again. And so it's kind of cool to see it this time around. This guy managed to be successful. This guy managed to make everything work. You did it all. He started independent, grew his empire, and now we have a second season of a TV show I find insufferable and stupid. But hey, it's successful and people like it and they're clamoring for more. So that's something, right? That's a sign of success. When you can get non-comic book fans to give a shit about your Superman/Spider-Man pastiche character. That's success. That's cool. I guess. I guess. Sure. That's all fine. But Kirkman's cool. The stuff of his I do like. I am a fan of the Walking Dead comic book. For the most part, I do like the television show. He did write, and I think did he direct? I know he wrote some episodes. I don't know if he directed any. I like the Walking Dead stuff. I think there's something interesting there. The Irredeemable Ant-Man is a good book. I do like that book. And I'll say Void Rivals, the stuff going on in the Energon universe, it is kind of exciting to see where that's going to go and where that's going to branch off to. Like, that's a real fun time to see. I think he's a guy worth exploring, and I encourage people to read his work, read other stuff that Skybound has created, and then see what you want to go from there. If you like Kirkman, I'm sure you're going to like somebody like Todd McFarlane or Garth Ennis. Two guys I like more than Kirkman. But you know what? It's all good and dandy. And if there's another comic book creator you'd like to see me talk about a bit, please let me know. I mean, we could easily do Garth Ennis or Todd McFarlane. Probably will at some point. Or Jack Kirby. You know, the big guys. But until then, enjoy watching Invincible Season 2. And thank you all for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.